Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you've joined us, whether you're on Good Life TV around the world or via the Good Life podcast, Good Life Conversations. It's so great to have you with us. And we have some great guests with us today. Chris Nikic is with me, along with Dan Grebe. Dan's in the black shirt, and Chris is next to him. Guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
This is an amazing story, and I really want to get to the story. But either one, Dan or Chris, talk a little bit about Chris's early life, because I know there was some real health challenges. I think, related to his trisomy 21, Down syndrome. I know there was an open heart surgery and so forth, but can one or both of you talk a little bit about kind of his early life and some of the challenges that he faced as a really young man?
Go ahead, Chris, share them.
So, a couple of years ago, I was never been called Down syndrome before. When I was born, I had to overcome the ear surgeries, the 5 months open heart surgery. I had eating challenges, and my neck was too weak to actually go on the Disney rides. And then at the point, I knew that I had to overcome those things, and we've been told by the professionals that I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So, my dad told them one day that he said, "You got to start treating my son special, and we need to treat him like gifted." And just like my dad treated my sister gifted, she was an Ivy basketball player. She went to a school where she played basketball. She graduated. She went to Dartmouth to play basketball overseas. And then she suffered a concussion. And then she also suffered the jet ski accident. And at that point on, I knew that my dad decided to, instead of to be special, to actually to be gifted, which means that we need to stop listening to the experts and the lid off, so I could have a chance to make some friends, have some fun, and during the fun part, back in 2019, I did a sprint triathlon for Special Olympics.
Let's just stop there.
I was too fast.
You know, listen. Let him stop. Okay. All right. He asked about your childhood, so you shared that. I'll give him a chance.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. And so one of the things I've figured out, Dan, in this process is that Chris has a pretty incredible family that thinks a lot differently. But Dan, tell, how did you meet Chris? Where did this journey start? And until after you answer that, we'll get into the Ironman and what actually happened. But how did you meet Chris?
I was on my own journey. I woke up one day 5 years ago, 320 pounds, and decided I needed to lose some weight. And I set a goal to lose 100 pounds. And I thought to myself, after I'd lost the weight, how could I, commit to keeping it off? And so someone had said, commit to doing an Ironman. And see, an Ironman is an event that requires almost a year of training to do the full event. And I figured, well, if I did that, I would now have to not only lose the weight, maintain the weight for a year for the training so that I could do the race. And when I asked somebody, what does the average person do? They said an average person trains 1 year and does an Ironman. I said, great, I'm going to train for 1 year and then I'm going to do 10 Ironman, which will ensure that I keep the weight off for a number of years. And so I did that. I traveled the world. I did Ironman all over the world, several full distance and several half distance Ironman. And then I had completed my goal, and I figured, what's the greatest way that I could thank God for restoring my health in my 40s? And so I started looking for someone that I could also help become an Ironman. See, success is not about what you do, it's about who you become. And becoming an Ironman requires that you learn a certain amount of disciplines in terms of the sports, but also the internal disciplines, the training when no one else is training, the waking up early, the eating a different diet, the mental capacity growth that is required to do it. So I went on a search to find someone to do it. At the time, I thought it would be a blind person or an incapacitated person, because those are the only people that have ever been led in an Ironman. So I went out looking for one of those two people. It took me over 8 months, and I still could not convince anyone to do an Ironman with me. And I'm starting to believe that maybe this desire I had in my heart to serve God and his people by helping someone else becoming an Ironman was probably not going to be a dream I was able to see come to fruition. At the same time, a triathlon club in which I'm the captain of started a partnership with Special Olympics. Now, I was away on business, so I couldn't be at their first meeting, and they kind of selected out who was going to train with the Special Olympics athletes. Well, Chris was training with another person, so he wasn't even at that event. And as Chris said earlier, he got too fast for his Special Olympics coach, a fantastic woman by the name of Simone. He actually got too fast for her on the bicycle, and so she did the most brave and biggest exhibit of character I've seen, and that is she allowed someone else to coach him, and she went to help him. And they came back to our club and said, who do we know that's very aggressive, a little bit crazy, and has a big heart? Everybody pointed towards me. You think your Uncle Dan's a little crazy? Yeah. And so that's how the two of us got connected, and the rest is history. So God answered my prayer, and at the same token, the Nikic family were looking for two things. They were looking for a guide that could help Chris get to the next level, which would be a sprint triathlon, a 10-mile-an-hour race to about 10-mile race to about a 30-mile race. And they were also looking for what Nick says is someone that is younger and better than them, a family that was younger and better that could be there in case Chris needed someone. And in God's perfect timing, all those things just happened to play out. Exactly what I needed and exactly what they needed for our temporary and long-term goals all came together.
Wow. Well, Dan, I don't know exactly what you do, but one thing you should be doing is public speaking.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm inspired just sitting here, but no, that's really cool. What an amazing, God is so good. It's just amazing to me. You said earlier before we came on about how kind of things were weaved together. I think that's amazing how he does that. So let's talk about this, because this is, the essence of what we're talking about here is triggered from this event that happened, which Chris is the first trisomy 21 Down syndrome individual who's ever done an Ironman. And I was doing a little research this morning about how many folks are born with trisomy 21, and it's in the United States about 1 in 700, worldwide about 1 in 1,000. There's 385,000 babies born every single day in the world, which is 140 million in a year. So the numbers of folks that are born with this extra chromosome, this trisomy 21, are big. There's a lot. So to think about, we're talking to right here, this guy who is the first one. That's incredible. So Chris, I want to say congratulations to you, because you're amazing and you're an inspiration, and to do what you did is incredible. So Dan, Chris, let's go back to that. It was last November, just a few months ago, in Panama City Beach, Florida. And let's talk about that day. And I learned a lot about the Ironman competition or the Ironman thing, which I didn't know about. Maybe some people don't know about, but describe the three parts to it, Dan. And I think you have to do it in 17 hours?
That's correct. So you have 17 hours to complete a total of 140.6 miles. It starts off with a 2.4-mile swim, and in this particular race, it was in the ocean. And then you transition from the swim to a bicycle, which is how far? 112 miles?
Yeah.
112-mile bike ride. And then what do we do after that?
The marathon.
And how long?
Just run a marathon.
A 26.2-mile marathon at the end for a total of how many miles? 140.6 miles. And how many hours do you have to do it? 17 hours, yes.
Unbelievable. And I was reading about and Dan, you were with him, and so you're in the water. So I mean, talk about this. I mean, you're there. I mean, you're thinking, making sure that everything's safe. Is that the primary goal for you?
Right. So I serve a few different roles for Chris. Now, number one is Chris has an intellectual disability, obviously Down syndrome, which affects a lot of areas for him. Number one is he has hearing issues. He talked about how he had hearing surgeries. How many ear surgeries did you have? 4 ear surgeries. He had a open heart surgery when he was 5 months old, right? 5 weeks or 5 months? 5 months old. He's got a lot of that. His body is predispositioned to have struggle to generate muscle tone, so he has to work extra hard to generate muscles. And then outside of that, he has the intellectual part, which is he struggles to know what distance looks like. So if I was to ask Chris, hey, how far is 100 miles? He would maybe point across a parking lot. Or if I say, Chris, how long will it take for us to walk across that parking lot? He may say it's a little bit longer or a little bit shorter because he doesn't really quite understand distance and time. So my role is number one, safety, obviously. Keep him safe in the ocean, on the bicycle, and on the run. You know, we're taking him to the extent of human exertion, not to the extent of Down syndrome exertion. You know, he's doing what only 1% of the population in the world will do. So I have those roles. And then outside of that is I have to help him pace. I have to get him into a pace that will keep him moving fast enough that he'll make his cutoffs because he doesn't understand his cutoffs.
Ah, wow.
And then I'm in charge of his nutrition and hydration too. If I didn't have enough stuff that I was in charge of.
Well, and I read about kind of what happened on the bike. So, and that number one, that there was a fall. I mean, I think he was coming down a hill or something. And did he crash on the bike?
Yeah, what happened?
So, around 40 miles, I stepped on an ant pile.
20 miles. He stepped on it. He stepped into an ant pile 20 miles in. And then what happened?
And then I went really fast, and the bike was out of control. And I guess the bike, on purposely, went to a bump, went to a skid, and I knew that while I was skiing the bike towards Dan, and Dan was trying to get away. And he's like, what the heck, man? Why are you doing like this?
Well, tell him how fast you were going when you crashed your bicycle.
21.
You're going 21 miles an hour. You hit
Oh my God.
You started to skid. You crashed your bicycle, and you scared your Uncle Dan. And then when I came back and saw you, what did you say?
You told.
Well, so he was going down a decline, and he got up to 21 miles an hour. He got a little out of control. And when I tried to tell him to slow down, he didn't hear me. And I told him to slow down again. He didn't hear me. And the third time he did hear me, he grabbed onto his back brake. At the same time, he hit a little bump. He lost control, and he began to crash. You know, it's a very scary thing because he started to skid towards me. And rule number one of being a good guide is, you know, obviously do everything you can to protect the athlete, but make sure the athlete doesn't also take you out. You know, the whole idea of being a lifeguard, you know, make sure you save the victim, but you also don't drown yourself in the process because you're no good to the victim if you're drowned yourself.
Right.
I was able to get away from him. So he didn't crash us both out. But while I got away from him, I could hear him behind me going down, his body hitting the ground, his bicycle, you know, scraping across the road. And all I can think of is like, God, this cannot be how this race ends.
Right.
Just 20 miles ago, he stepped in an ant pile and had ants that went all the way up his body, and they were red ants and they were biting him. And we had never planned for that. And I figured like that was our trial. That was our issue. We already made it past that. And now here we are, Chris is crashing. And the story is going to be first person with Down syndrome gets injured in Ironman race. Ironman never allows another person with Down syndrome to accomplish. That's what's going through my mind. I'm thinking about like, how am I going to go and tell his father that we're at the hospital now? All of those things, you know, when you crash at 21 miles an hour on a bicycle, that's usually at a minimum a broken collarbone. And, you know, all that's going through my mind. I end up getting my bike down and I'm way in front of him now because I stopped while he was skidding out. And I get off my bike, I turn around, I run back towards Chris. And I mean, tears are already starting to form in my eyes. And Chris pops up and he's literally jumping up and down going, Dan, I crashed my bike. I crashed my bike. He's laughing and he's having a good time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are killing me, Chris. Stop it. And he was pretty much fine. He had a scraped up knee, he got some road rash. His bicycle was fine, you know, and he was ready to go. And we were able to remount our bikes and continue. This is a great story. You know, Nick, Chris's dad said before the race, like, Dan, everything's going to be fine. Just calm down. And if everything's not fine, God's just going to create a great story for us all to tell. And I wish I'd have put my hand over his mouth and said, stop saying that, Nick. I don't want it to be a great story. I just want to talk about how we started and we finished. And it was no big deal.
Right.
But that wasn't the plan that day. And Chris did, you know, what he's done so many times in his lifetime. And over the course of the last year plus training with me, is he did what he's done so many times, which is he surprised all of us. Surprised us all again.
So I'm reading this article about this story, and in this moment, you know, there was a moment, I guess, and maybe you can describe it where Chris's dad Nick kind of clutched him and whispered in his ear, "Are you going to let your pain win, or let your dreams win?"
Yep.
Was that kind of was that what did that do? I mean, how did that affect the moment in terms of continuing on?
Well, that was the turning point in the race. That would have been the moment where it either all ended or it all really began. And so I'm going to let Nick share with you his interaction with his dad. And then I'll share with you my interaction with his dad, because we both took different things away from that moment. And it's very special that what he said and how he said it. So Chris, you hit the wall at mile 10. Tell him what happened when you hit the wall. Now, before he does, I'll tell you what the wall is. The wall, every athlete hits the wall. They hit this place where their body is just finished. And now it's not about the body. It's about the brain. It's the brain telling the body to continue on, even though you can tell a great story, even though you can say, I have a cramp, you have a great excuse, you have a reason to quit, and you have to will yourself. Now, most people hit the wall at mile 20. Typically, I hit the wall around mile 20, 22, and it's now just negotiating with my body and just getting to the finish at that point. Chris hit that at mile 10. So what happened when you hit the wall? Talk to him about that.
So when I hit the major wall on mile 10, someone had to call my dad, and he came out, he pulled me aside, and he hugs me, and we had this human connection. And okay, in my human connection, I knew that I was in extreme pain. The blisters, the road rash, the back rash, the skin, and
the legs were cramped up too, right?
The legs were cramping. And my dad said, there's a battle going on between the pain and the dream. And the dream was not to become an Ironman. The goal had to be completed under 17 hours so I could be an Ironman.
So you can accomplish your dream. Tell me what your dream is.
And here are 3 things for my dream is to have my own house, to have a car, and she married Smoking Hot Blonde. And if you know anyone who has Smoking Hot Blonde, call me back.
You stop it. He's not gonna help me find a smoking hot blonde one. So what he wants
Wait,
smoking hot blonde.
did he say smoking hot blonde?
He does. He said he's looking for a smoking hot blonde. Smoking hot blonde.
Oh my gosh.
Tell him. Don't tell me who else has a
This
smoking
is one of the greatest moments in TV history.
So his mother is
Okay, if you're out there and you are a smoking hot blonde, please contact us.
So Chris, because I want your audience to understand what he means. Because there's some women that might be like, I would have raised my hand except I'm not blonde. What do you say smoking hot blonde? What do you mean?
Hot Blonde.
No, you mean what? Unconditional?
Unconditional.
Unconditional what?
Love.
You want unconditional love?
Yeah.
Like you see that your dad has from your mom?
Yeah.
And when you say a smoking hot blonde, what is that really?
That's real blonde.
That's a concept.
Who adores me.
Tell him it's a concept. That part, right?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a concept.
It's a concept. So remember, he has Down syndrome, so he doesn't talk like you and I do. So smoking hot blonde is what his dad calls his mom, which represents unconditional love. Now, my wife is a brunette. And do you love Aunt Mindy?
Yes.
Okay, she qualifies. Who's your favorite person on my real estate team?
Gianna.
Gianna, brunette. Who's your second favorite person on my team?
Alexis.
Alexis, brunette. So don't disqualify yourself.
Got it.
If
Got
you
it.
love him unconditionally and you want to marry him, send your applications to Chris at chrisnikic.com. That's what we're saying, right?
Got it. Brilliant.
Okay, down.
So Chris, so those are the three. So the dream, when we talk about the dream, we're talking about living independently in a house, a car, and unconditional love from his wife. That's what the dream is. And this moment in the race, when he hit the wall, symbolized, are we going to let the pain win? Are we done? Or are we going to go for the dream? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
And what did you tell your dad when he asked you that question? Who's going to win?
The dream.
The dream.
The dream.
Now, Dean, here's something that your audience has to hear.
Yeah.
Chris, when he was pressed and he was asked who was going to win, his pain or his dream, he chose the dream. And here's the reason why he chose the dream, because he has an intimate relationship with his dream. He knows the parts of his dream. He knows what he must do to accomplishment. Chris is willing to do an Ironman, a goal, so he can have his dream. See, Chris doesn't care about Ironman. It's either here nor there. Golf, Ironman. He just wants to be around other people. That's inclusion. He loves human connection. You see all the hugs I'm getting? He loves that. But he's willing to go through 17 hours of pain, what 99.9% of the population of the world is not willing to do to get his dream.
Right.
Well, what's your dream?
Beautiful.
What's my dream? Do we have such a desire that we're willing to do what literally no one else has ever done before so we can accomplish it?
Brilliant.
So if I could, I'm going to dovetail that into the conversation I had with Nick at the exact same time. Is that
Yes,
okay?
please.
So when Nick came up, see, Chris was hitting the wall, and I know Chris well. I'm the closest male to him than his father. You know, those two are the closest, and then I've got a close second. I can help Chris with 95% of his problems, but that's still 5% that really Nick is the only person that can talk him through, and his mom, Patty, of course. But Nick was there that day. So I called him out. Well, when we called Nick out, one of the first things he said is take the tether off between Chris and I. And I didn't agree initially that was a very good idea, because I knew that Chris struggles with distance and time, and that he's automatically going to walk and not keep the pace for him to finish the race. But because Nick is his father and I needed to respect him, I just stepped away and said, I'll be here when you're ready. Well, Nick had his conversation with Chris, and then he circled back to talk to me and Chris. And there was another couple of guides, my backup guides, that were there in case anything happened to me. And then, of course, a pack of other people that are following us. And Chris then stops and Nick then stops, and Nick's almost 7 feet tall, a very tall man. He stands in front of all of us and he says out loud these words. He says, God sent angels to be with my son, and I'm going to let those angels take him home from here. Nick gave himself permission to no longer worry about his son, and gave me permission to take care of him. In that moment, that validated every difficult time I've ever had in my life. Every struggle, every time I've been cut short, every time I've been let down, every time I've been told I wouldn't amount to anything. That was the moment that God was preparing me for.
Oh,
And it was that handoff of Nick saying, I've taken my son as far as I can go, and I'm going to entrust him in his most vulnerable state to you, Dan, and I'm going to refer to you as God's provision for such. That validated every piece of brokenness that I've had growing up in my life.
unbelievable.
And that was the turning moment for both of us. From there, Chris and I started clicking. Chris was struggling because, again, we were doing normal athlete stuff. We were running what are called 6 and 1, run for 6 minutes, walk for 1 minute. Well, Chris was getting more and more, as he was getting in more and more pain, he was getting more and more impatient. And I would say, Chris, we're running for 6 minutes. We do this all the time. Well, Chris had never done this distance before, under this amount of stress, with this many people watching, with waking up this early in a strange town, that he was getting emotionally, physically exhausted. And he would say, Dan, how much longer? And I would say, I just told you, 30 seconds ago, 5 more minutes. And then he would ask me again, and he would ask me again, and he'd want to stop, and he'd want to stop. And that's because he didn't know how much longer the pain would last. And I had forgotten that. But when Nick kind of reinvigorated me, it gave me new energy to think too. And I started thinking, like, how do I get Chris past this moment? Because I no longer have that option of Nick. And so we started going, and I started remembering Chris has a disability that's also a superpower. Chris will do the same thing over and over and over again. When I train for 100 miles, I ride out 50 miles, I ride back 50 miles. And I go varying places so I have different scenery to see. He doesn't. He rides the same 1 mile loop 100 times because he likes the consistency. It drives me crazy when he does it. He loves it because he has familiarity.
Right.
I'm like, that's what we need to do. There's these cones on the side of the road. They're going to be there the whole race course. Chris, we're going to run for 10 cones. We're going to walk for 2 cones. Count the cones with me. And as soon as we started doing that, he stopped complaining about it. He stopped asking to walk, and he just started running with me. And the rest of the race actually got easier because I found out where he needed to be. So the moral of this little story is sometimes someone else breathing life into you, does it change your physiology? It opens up more of what's possible in the brain and in the knowledge you already have.
Yes. So we get to 16 hours, 46 minutes, and 9 seconds. He finishes the race. What was that like, Chris, when you finished?
I knew that, like Dan said, I was keeping up pace, the speed. We had to count cones, and then we had to count 10 cones.
10 cones, yeah.
And then walk, and then run again, and then walk. And then Dan told me if I give him the last 2 miles, if I give him the personal best for the last 2 miles, I would hug his race state team.
And all of her friends, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
And I did that.
So the last 2 miles, he gave me his personal best. He ran really, really hard. And then at the end, I said, Chris, we have half a mile left. We could walk it in if we want to. We're not going to. We're going to set the bar high for the next person that comes behind you with Down syndrome. But you can hug all your friends on the way in. And so he actually led us through. And as we would enter into new areas of the last 2 miles, there was a corral system that we had to run through. And they call that the finishing corral, then the finishing chute. And as he would enter in, the first group was a series of folks that we trained with. They were there wearing his 1% shirts, and we stopped and we hugged all of them. There's videos of that. And then the next was my real estate team, where he's has an internship with them, and they all traveled up to watch him. And he got to stop and hug all of them. And then the last group that he got to hug were his his childhood friends, the parents that also were told that their children were going to have Down syndrome at the same time his parents were told they were going to have Down syndrome. Kids that he had grown up with since he was 1, 2 years old that had the same struggles as him. Those are the last people he hugged. He got to inspire his friends. And then after that, we got onto the carpet, we started running, and who yelled out? What did they yell out?
Who yelled out?
What did they say exactly?
Chris Nikic.
Oh.
Basically, when I was running into the red carpet, and the voice of Iron Man, Mike Riley turned to his right. And then when he turned to his right, he said, Chris Nikic, you're an Iron Man. Getting past him, he went to his left side. And as I was crossing the line on his left side started saying, Chris Nikic, you're an Iron Man.
That's right. And they said, Chris Nikic,
Wow.
And you know what happened at that moment is Chris never felt the pressure of this race because he just, he lives in the moment, right? That's his disability. His disability is that he's not focusing on the future. He doesn't have the ability to do all that. He doesn't really have the ability to focus a lot on the past. He lives in the moment. That's also his superpower.
Yeah.
He was just there having fun, but I wasn't living in the moment. I was living in all of the prayers of the parents of children that have Down syndrome all over the world. They took a deep breath the moment him and I stepped into the water, and they said, please God, let Chris finish so that he can be an example of what my child will one day be able to do. These kids like him, families like him, live their whole lives hearing that their children will not amount to much.
Right.
And for Chris to do this, not only does it validate Chris and the Nikic family, it validates all of these folks with Down syndrome. From the moment you're told that you have a child with Down syndrome, you're told you have a child that's going to have Down syndrome. And let me tell you what your options are. Your legal options to go terminate the pregnancy, do all this, do all that. Chris is going to be, for the rest of humanity, those parents are going to say, well, what about that kid that has Down syndrome? Should we really terminate? Maybe he could just turn out to be like Chris.
Right.
And a year ago, I didn't know a person with Down syndrome. I didn't know a single person with Down syndrome. I never had met anyone with Down syndrome. I knew nothing about Down syndrome and intellectual disabilities. And I was somewhat broken from, my childhood trauma that I received. And exactly what I needed was a young man that would love me unconditionally, would hug me all the time. He would bring joy into my life. And I just wish I had met him earlier, because everywhere this young man goes, everywhere his friends go, joy appears. And to think that we have experts and doctors and parents that are terminating that because of fear of what's possible. He's ending it.
I don't even know how to wrap this up, but we're out of time. This is truly incredible. If you're watching this, I think that there's about 18 different messages in what Dan is talking about and what Chris has done. This is true possibility thinking, talking about the dream. So, guys, congratulations. This is inspiring. Chris, you are an Iron Man. It's a pleasure to meet you. And Dan, congratulations. God is good.
Amen to that. And if you want to follow Chris's story, you can follow him on his Instagram at Chris Nikic. And there's going to be folks that want to go on this journey with Chris. Chris is currently training for Ironman Hawaii, which will be the world championship. You have to get invited to go. He's been invited, so him and I will be racing in October. And there are folks that want to do something to be part of it. And if you'd like to do something to be part of it, you can accept his 1% challenge by going to his website, chrisnikic.com. And if you'd like to donate money to help him get to Hawaii, there's a GoFundMe out there for Chris Nikic. It's started by me. Feel free to donate to that and come be part of changing the world. You never know how God will use you. And in my case, he used me in a world that I knew nothing about.
Beautiful. Ironman Hawaii. Chris Nikic, Nikic. chrisnikic.com is the website. Guys, thank you. God bless you. Congratulations.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
You got it.